you were working 20 years in pharmaceutical. What was the turning point?
The turning point was really COVID. I thought, well, I could run like a mindfulness or meditation session to help people. I thought about 6 or 7 people would turn up, and there was 60 or 70.
I feel like well-being as a word is a bit of a buzzword at the moment. Can you break down for us what well-being actually means?
Well-being is this really careful balancing act between the assets or the resources that we have as individuals and the challenges that we're facing at any one time, both at work and at home. Burnout is not just a matter of you've got too much work on your plate. There'll be these internal programs that are driving us. And when you combine those internal beliefs with the external challenges, then that's the recipe for burnout. One of the main signals that there's something that needs your attention is if you're having that feeling of, oh, I'm here again.
Well, hello and welcome to the Human Being Podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Lansdown, and today I'm joined by Catherine Robertson. Catherine is a wellbeing and leadership consultant, a coach, and an IEQ9 Enneagram practitioner who supports individuals and leaders to enhance well-being, resilience, and meaningful performance. Welcome, Catherine.
Thanks, Alicia. Nice to be here with you today.
Thank you. Yes, likewise. And for people who don't know you, what does your life look like right now?
Well, life looks a little chaotic right now. We're currently packing up to move house, which that happens in a few days. So we're currently immersed in that, and juggling some work commitments as well as all the family duties. So that's the sort of immediate environment. But I guess how it looks overall is actually, despite all the turmoil that's going on and all the challenges and stresses, it actually feels really pretty good right now. It's kind of amazing to be at a stage in life to kind of realize that there can be a lot of stress and there can be a lot of disturbance, but there can be this deeper undercurrent of kind of peace and well-being, resilience. So I've actually been tapping into like a lot of feelings of being grateful lately. Just the last few weeks, just as I'm moving about my day, just feeling a little bit like, oh, wow, this is not how life used to be. And it feels really nice to be in this space today.
Beautiful. And tell us a little bit about the work that you do. Like, I know that you've been working with Health New South Wales, and you do a lot of coaching and leadership work in the wellbeing health and wellbeing space.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, it's evolved over the last 4 years that I've been working for myself after 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry. And it's really evolved into being like two main streams. So there's the workplace wellbeing facilitation work that I do. So as you mentioned, I've just been doing a project with New South Wales Health, which has just been incredible, that they've put so much energy and resources into the well-being of their staff to fund masterclasses on this topic. So that's been great. Corporate well-being sessions and facilitating those. And then on the other side, it's been that one-on-one leadership coaching, or professionals who feel like they're close to a burnout stage and they need some support to grow and evolve. So it's really those two main channels which my work covers, which I love, because I love the deep one-on-one work, and I love being able to bring, the well-being strategies and tools and techniques that I've learned to a wider audience to help people right now, because the world is a bit of a crazy place right now.
And what led you to this work? Like, you were working 20 years in pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
So, what was the turning point?
The turning point was really COVID. I think I had known for quite a while that I wanted to do some work in this space, but I didn't really know what that looked like. And I felt, really still very committed and wedded to my corporate role. I didn't really have a roadmap or a path to move out of that. And that's obviously a very rewarding, lucrative job when you work in that industry. So it was actually COVID that did it for me. So when our industry, I used to work in the sales capacity for pharmaceuticals, and we got taken off the road before the rest of the world went into lockdown, really, because we were going in and out of hospitals. And I remember one night, one of the senior leaders, she sent an email just talking about the need for us all to stay connected right now. You know, we obviously didn't understand in March 2020 what was really happening and coming, and she was talking about it's important to stay connected and for us to support each other. And I remember going to bed that night thinking, what could I do to help us stay connected? And the next morning I thought, well, I could run like a mindfulness or meditation session to help people. So I gave her a call and I said, you know, this is my idea. And she said, if you would like to do that, go for it. But also just take care of your own well-being as well. So I decided on a Wednesday, we'd do it on a Wednesday morning, middle of the week. And I thought about 6 or 7 people would turn up, and there was 60 or 70 from the company on this Zoom call, which was freaky. Like, I was like, what the hell? So that was a little bit like white knuckling, like, oh my goodness. And my vision at the time was, oh, this would be a space for everyone to share and support each other and talk about what was going on. But it very quickly became clear that people just wanted to receive. So the format became like 15 minutes guided meditation, 15 minutes of mindfulness teaching that I would just share whatever I felt called to share. And people just sort of received. And so that's how it began. And then it evolved from that to supporting the leadership team with wellbeing strategy and some putting together some company-wide programs. And so by the time the next year ran around, my job was being made redundant, it just felt like the real natural progression. And the company actually hired me as a consultant to continue to facilitate those sessions and to provide coaching for the employees, which was wonderful. So that's how my business began.
Amazing. And had you facilitated, you know, mindfulness workshops before then?
I had actually, so about 8 years ago, nearly 9 years ago, I ran a 60-day gratitude challenge, because gratitude was the first mindfulness practice that I started to adopt about 12 years ago, and it had such a huge impact on me. I kind of had this feeling of, I want the whole world to feel this, like, or imagine what the world would be like if everyone practiced gratitude. So I've initiated this 60-day challenge, and the format of that was a weekly Zoom call, and there was 300 people around the world that would dial in from London, Paris, Thailand, like all over New Zealand, all over the place for this. So I kind of got the practice and the muscle of holding space and facilitating some sessions from that experience. So I think when that email came through in 2020, my memory went straight back to I can do that, like I know how to do that, and that's something that I could offer to be of service. So yeah.
That's beautiful. And so you mentioned as well you work in these, you know, 2 streams in the sort of workplace wellbeing and the leadership development and coaching. How do these 2 streams connect together for you?
Well, I think what I feel really passionate about is the fact that any sort of wellbeing initiative that an organisation implements for the wellbeing of its staff and employees needs to come from the top. Like, after being involved in the corporate world for over 20 years, like, you see the interventions and the programs get put in place to support employee well-being, but they sort of feel like adjuncts. You know, it might be an exercise class, it might be a lunch and learn session, but it doesn't really infiltrate the whole fabric of the organization or the culture unless it's really coming from the top and it's really coming from the leader who is living and breathing this. And there's so much more understanding about that now, the power of role modeling. There's an Australian group called GLWS who I do some work. I use their programs, and they speak to the fact that the leader casts a huge shadow across an organization in terms of the impact of well-being. You know, so much of an employee's well-being is determined by their direct manager. And so that's a really important role. And so unless it's coming from the top and it's embedded and employees see the leaders prioritizing their own well-being, you know, speaking to these topics and living and breathe it, it's not enough just to provide the service. It's not enough just to say that we do it. They've actually got to walk the talk as well. So from that point of view, I really love to work with leaders, because it's helping them really connect in with their truth, their well-being, and then they're more likely to bring that to the whole system that they work within.
Yeah, it sounds like it needs to really be embedded into the culture. Like I know personally that I've worked in environments where, the boss isn't leaving on time or they're getting in early, and then you find yourself like, subconsciously taking those actions as well and staying back late and or like, yeah, overworking, I guess, as a result of what they're doing.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. There's a term that there's some research from a consultant from New Zealand who I rely on quite a lot, Nick Petrie. He's done some great work in this space, and he talks about there either being sacrificial leaders or thriving leaders. And so sacrificial leaders were the ones that don't prioritize their well-being. They're trying to do a lot, and the way that they behave is exactly what you say. The team starts to embody those characteristics as well, because that's what's being modeled.
Yeah. And like, I feel like well-being as a word is a bit of a buzzword at the moment. Can you break down for us what well-being actually means?
Mm. Yeah, again, I use this definition from GLWS, which is that well-being is this really careful balancing act between the assets or the resources that we have as individuals and the challenges that we're facing at any one time, both at work and at home. So if you've got more challenges than resources or assets, your well-being is going to dip, and then vice versa. So you start to really get this idea that well-being is really quite complex. It's not static. It's not a destination that we reach. It's always going up and down based on the challenges and the assets that we have at any one time. And it also encompasses different domains of well-being. There's about 6 main domains of well-being. So it's very complex. It's one word, but it's one single word, but it actually really means a lot. So it's to be in this state where we do have the assets, we've got the resources to be able to deal with whatever life is throwing at us, and be able to sort of be grounded in our own strength and our own ability to handle whatever comes our way, because we've cultivated those resources or assets within us.
And what are those sort of 6 aspects to well-being?
So, the first one would be the most obvious one that people think about, which is your physical well-being. The quality of the food to eat, if you're moving, if you're exercising, your energy, your vitality. The next one would be your emotional well-being. So what's your level of resilience like to deal with those challenges? Like, can you regulate yourself? Can you handle stress in an appropriate way? Then there'd be your cognitive well-being. So what's our level of focus and growth or learning mindset that we're able to adopt? That's got a huge component. And then there's relational well-being. So what's the quality of the relationships like that we have in our life? Do we have a sense of belonging? Is there psychological safety within our relationships? Are they nurturing us? Do we have quality relationships in our personal life where we're not lonely? And then there's a sense of meaning and purpose. So are we living in alignment with the values that we have, and in congruence with that? And then the final one would be our environmental well-being. So what does it look? What do the systems look like that we live in, that we work with? Do we have access to nature? So when you start to look at it from those domains, again, you start to see the complexity of well-being, because most people who come for coaching or who are sitting in a workshop feeling depleted, they can't really articulate why. It's just this sense of, I'm just not feeling great, like life's challenging. And until you start to break it down and maybe do a little bit of an audit across those 6 domains, then we've got clarity. Then there's something we can work in, and to see where needs attention, and where are we actually pretty strong and robust. Because we tend to naturally probably gravitate to one or two that kind of feels like a strength for us, but then there's ones that we neglect.
Yeah, yeah. So you kind of go, oh yeah, that box is ticked,
Mm.
and move on. But there's still something in the background that's, making you feel unease,
Yeah,
at unease. Yeah.
yeah.
So, and what are the areas, I guess, that most people, or what, when we think about burnout, for instance, what are those from those 6 points? Like, what areas um, do you see most people need to work with, or is there some sort of common theme when it comes to burnout?
It's really complex. It is so complex, and the reason I say that is because there's also another piece to this, which is not just those domains of well-being and how well resourced that we are, because there's actually a bigger part, which is our psychological makeup and what we bring to our life as well. So what we see again from Nick Petrie's research, he's done so much work in this space of burnout. He's interviewed thousands of leaders, and what he understands is that burnout is not just a matter of you've got too much work on your plate, you're not prioritizing your health and your physical well-being, you've got a bad boss. It's not just as simple or as black and white as that. It's actually quite complex, and what brings people to burnout is a combination of factors. And it's not just the external, it's often some personal beliefs that we have. And this is where it gets kind of uncomfortable, because it will be things like, I'm a perfectionist, or it's hard for me to say no, or I've always got to achieve. So there'll be these internal programs that are driving us. And when you combine those internal beliefs with the external challenges of not enough resources to do your job, or a toxic environment at work, then that's the recipe for burnout as well. So it kind of takes, it all points to the need to do some basically self-awareness work to kind of unpack
deep work.
some deep work. Yeah.
And how do you, when you work with your clients, how do you unpack those beliefs? Like, do you have some tools that you use?
Yeah. So there's a couple of well, the GLWS is a really great profile to do that, because they break well-being down into those 6 different domains, and then also separate into how are you scoring at work and how are you scoring at home. So you can really see like red, amber, green flags where you might be strong and where you might be a bit in trouble that needs some attention. So that's one of the tools that I use. The main one that I've got most experience with is working with, as you mentioned at the beginning, Enneagram. So Enneagram is a really great system and map for increasing self-awareness. And so I do a report through the integrative Enneagram group, and that gives a client a 42-page report, which is a deep dive into all levels of their psyche and being. And then we can use that as the map for the coaching process to kind of start to unravel and unpack some of these patterns that are really, really deep, often unconscious patterns that are running the show and maybe causing some of those detrimental problems to well-being. So we can then unpack that, we can work with it, and we can start to make some progress. And then the third one, which is I've only just recently been trained in, it's called the Leadership Growth Profile, and that's from a group called Triple Goal. And again, that's pointing to the fact that outcomes are driven by our behaviors, and are those behaviors enhancing our performance, or are they detrimental? And so again, that's a 360 leadership profile, which a leader can then use to do some of that deep inner work as well.
Yeah. And so when you're going through this process with your clients, what are the biggest challenges that you have with people? Is it, that the seeing, because I think sometimes we can cast our blame, let's say, for better words, to the external environment, or to our boss, or to, the person who, I don't know, put their brakes on or cut you off in traffic or whatever it is. Like, and, just cast our sort of, cast that sort of external to us. Do you find that, people seeing their own belief systems is probably the biggest challenge in the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's scary.
Yeah.
Like it's edgy work, and some people, when you start to get close to what some of those internal narratives might be, the defenses come up.
Yeah.
And so, having been there myself, and I know that territory, it makes it, I guess, easier to maybe hold the space for people to do that. But also, you can only, as a coach or anyone doing this sort of work, meet people where they're at, and whatever they're ready to work with. And so they may be recognizing that some of the relationships in their working life are, not as easeful as they would like them to be, and that's what they'd like to work on. And through the course of that, it could be just unraveling, unpacking how they're interacting with other people, and what may be causing some problems or not. So it's a real delicate mix to try and unpack that with people, but I think probably that fear of getting to the root of the origin of the behaviors or habits is the edgiest, and so we don't obviously go there straight away. That's a process of cultivating trust and rapport and building relationships before getting to that part. So yeah.
Mm. And I think, like most people I know for myself, have, there's patterns in life. There's things that sort of happen on repeat, and they're the warning signs, they're the red flags to tell you, hey, look at this. How can people sort of, gain that self-awareness through, seeing those emotions, those patterns, those things that come up to say, hey, this is a message. There's a call to action here. There's something to look at here. Like, how can people cultivate their own self-awareness if they don't have a coach or somebody to work with?
I mean, I think one of the main signals that there's something that needs your attention is if you're having that feeling of, oh, I'm here again. Like, this is a familiar situation. Like, huh. And, there may have been occasions where it's like, okay, I blame the boss or blame the partner or blame my family or whatever it may be. But if that feeling is still just nagging, like, oh, I'm here again, that's generally pointing that there's something that needs your attention. So there's various things that can help. I mean, I'm a huge fan of meditation. I've been meditating for a long time. So I think having some stillness practice where you can then reflect can be massively helpful to start to begin to see these. And I think journaling, anytime there's something that's just feeling like it's getting stirred up within you, just to sit down and just begin to write without any clear agenda or plan. But often in that process of writing, and I think it really needs to be writing and not typing or using a phone, but there's something in that writing practice which then starts to sort of connect the dots and start to be able to see some of those patterns. So that can be a really great tactic as well. So I think the stillness for reflection and just starting to listen to ourselves a bit more, because we're currently in this distraction world where we're bombarded with content and noise and notifications all the time. So it becomes even more important to carve out these periods where we are still, whether it's first thing in the morning or in the evening, to just disconnect and allow yourself just some quiet reflection, contemplation time. And
Yeah,
then
better
start
out than
writing.
in, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Um, and I think too, there's, something to be said about those distractions. Like, we're bombarded with distractions. I put my phone actually on do not disturb automatically from like 5 p.m. till 9 a.m. the next day, because I
That's
am
good.
that, if I see a notification, like, I think that I've got to respond to it then. But if I don't see it, it's like
That's
I
it.
don't even think about it. So,
Yeah.
um,
It's really
yeah.
important. It's really important to have those strategies. It's one of the things that I advise most people in my workshops is not turning your phone on for the first hour of the day, and people freak out,
Mm,
and it's challenging that need to
yeah.
always be connected.
Yeah.
Because that first hour of how you spend your day can set the tone for the rest of the day. And why would you want to hijack your system with bad news, you know, crazy content first thing in the morning?
Yeah.
You
And it
know,
spikes your cortisol as well.
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah, yeah.
gosh.
Or for me, because I work at home, I notice if I go straight on my phone, my morning's a little bit sort of sluggish, and then I'll find out, I'll be drinking tea and eating breakfast, and then just I haven't had a shower yet, and I'm not dressed to sit at the computer, and then it just feels a bit of an effort. Whereas if I prioritize that hour and I get up and I do my meditation practice and I have a walk or do some exercise, and then I eat my breakfast, then I have a shower, and then I engage with technology, it's a
Mm,
completely different energy and feel for the day. It feels like
yeah.
I'm in control rather than being dragged along passively by the technology, which is what it does. It
Mm,
just drags us, and it just becomes a habit. There was a woman in a workshop I facilitated last week, and she was sharing that her and her husband had made an agreement that at 7 o'clock in the evening the phones went away, and they weren't allowed. And she even said she banned her husband from taking the phone to the bathroom because she was like, that became his strategy, you know, like he would be sitting on the toilet for like half an hour just to get his fix of like scrolling. So
Oh my
they
gosh.
just came up with this agreement, and she said,
Yeah.
you know, we can just eat. She said, because we're both just sitting on the couch every night scrolling, and it's empty, it's soulless, it's disconnected. And she said, we now, even if we're just listening to music and we're not talking, it feels so much different because we're
Hmm.
not engaged with it. So it just takes
Yeah.
these little tweaks, you know. It's thinking like, how did we live 10 years ago or 15 years ago? What was our morning like? It wasn't filled with Instagram reels. It wasn't filled with YouTube clips. It was prioritizing ourselves probably a bit more than we're doing now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I know. Take me back.
No, no. But there's things we
Although
can do.
I try to spend 3 hours every morning for me and my dog Harry, because otherwise I'm the same. Like I'll wake up and I'll just, phone, and then two coffees down and I'm like
I know, I know.
frazzled, and it just, trickles into everything that you do, and, everything is, rushed and all, yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that me time, me,
Mm.
putting yourself first, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And and back to sort of the, sort of burnout, and, I know a lot of people struggle with, saying no, or feeling guilty resting, or feeling guilty even putting themselves first. How does that people pleasing belief system contribute to, waking up and checking our phone, or, being of service to everybody else but ourselves?
Massively, massively, because if we're engaged with all of that external, and we're not prioritizing our own well-being through through over giving or over committing or not being able to say no or to not have good boundaries, then we're constantly depleting ourselves. And it can be a very sneaky one, because those can look very altruistic, good behaviors on the surface. Like, we all want to be a nice person. It's good to be a generous person, but there can be too much of a good thing that then starts to become, a damaging aspect
Mm.
to our lives. One of Nick's research aspects is that he looked at, when he was doing all the interviews with leaders about burnout, he saw there was a cohort of about 5% of people who didn't burn out, or who seemed to be pretty immune. So he's like, what's going on with these guys? And
Mm.
it turned out there was about 7 common behaviors that they had, which seemed to protect them. So it was things like like they'd reflected on the best and worst ways for them to work. They'd realized that in the past they'd maybe sort of sacrificed themselves too much, and they'd given too much, and they realized that that wasn't sustainable. So they'd reflected on the best and worst ways for them to work. Now, that could be things like blocking out 3 hours in their work calendar with no notifications, so that they can focus on deep work rather than being constantly drawn into meetings and conversations. So it would be things like that. But it would also be things like having some boundaries between their work life and their home life. In the past, they may have been blurred, especially with hybrid working now. They were answering emails at 8 o'clock at night. They were looking at emails on the weekend, and they'd actually started to go, no, this is not helpful. And they advised their teams, you can call me if there's an emergency, but I'm not going to be checking my emails in the evening. So they created these different little rituals and habits, which then ultimately sustained them. But it was mostly about having boundaries, honoring what they needed, realizing that they may have got a buzz from completing everything on their to-do list earlier in their career, and that felt really good. But as their jobs increased, their jobs got bigger, they got more responsibilities, that became impossible. So they kind of made peace with not getting everything done. They prioritized really well, and at the end of the day, they kind of went, okay, that's as much as I can do. So there's these 7 key behaviors that we can learn from these, what's called sustainable high performers, that we can go, okay, what can we do? What can we experiment with? And it is things like having a phone strategy, not turning their phone on in the evening, or having a work phone and a home phone, and lots of different techniques. But we can look at this in terms of where am I depleting myself, what are the habits that I'm engaging in that are contributing to that? And then what kind of life do I want to live? I mean, most people want to thrive. Most people want to feel joyful and feel good. So it does take that reflection to kind of go, okay, where am I overgiving, or where is it difficult for me to say no to someone? And if it is difficult for me to say no to someone, why is that? And
Mm.
that may be something that needs to be worked with a therapist or
Yeah.
a coach to unpack that.
Yeah. And do you think it'd be helpful for somebody to do that, sort of at the end of, if they're going through, let's say, for instance, they're burnt out, they know that something needs to change, like having a daily reflection, or, setting intentions at the beginning of the day and then having some reflection at the end of the day to notice, what did go well, what didn't go well so well, and what needs to be tweaked. Like, I know personally, for me, I used to just work, 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 and then crash. But now, like, I know that if I schedule breaks in and I take really good breaks and, step away from technology, I'm much more effective in the time that I am spending, and I get things done so much quicker because I'm rested and I'm not, constantly looking at a screen or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the idea of what is giving us energy versus what's depleting us. And often I think the trap that people get into, especially because a lot of industries now, people are being asked to do more with maybe less resources or less people doing the job. So it is very easy to fall into overworking as a way to get it done. And then things like the hobbies or the passions that give us life and sustain us and make us feel good kind of fall by the wayside. So then life becomes all about working hard and then falling on the couch and watching Netflix or just scrolling on the phone. And then it really doesn't feel satisfying because we're probably neglecting that relational domain of well-being or meaning and purpose, or those other aspects, the environmental part, getting out in nature. So it's really crucial to kind of go, okay, what makes me feel good? How do I need to incorporate that into my day and my week, and actually plan it, put it in the calendar, put it in the schedule, to really connect with what lights you up and what gives you energy. And that idea of having an opposite life to our work, be multifaceted, having lots of different interests and connections is what ultimately gives us more meaning and purpose and fulfillment and joy, and creativity. They start to flow. And then, as you say, we can bring our best self to our work, because when we're at work, we're working really hard and we're focused. But it's
Yeah.
not, what in the research that came out from Nick Petrie, one of the leaders commented that his boss advised him that he should be dating the company, not married to it. I thought that's brilliant. Like, what a great way to kind of go. Your identity doesn't have to be fused with your
Yeah.
career, and what you do for a living. You can date it and then step back.
Yeah, I love that. And what
Mm.
other aspects are they, these 5% of people, what are the other aspects of those seven? So we've got boundaries.
Mm. Reflecting on the best and worst ways for them to work, making peace with not getting everything done, having a ritual to switch from their work mode to their personal mode.
Okay.
So for some people that would be on the transit home from work, reading a book instead of being on the phone. Or it could be they run through a mantra as they shut down their computer, and they sort of actually say shut down complete, and it's a sort of like ritual to sort of disconnect. For people that work at home, it can be changing their clothing and going for a walk to have that boundary. There was one example which just tickled me, because this man described how when he left the house in the morning, he visualized putting on a uniform, kind of like a superhero outfit, and off he went to work. And
Yeah.
then in the evening, the last lamppost before he got home, he took his outfit off and he visualized hanging it up. And then when he walked into his family, he was disconnected from his work.
I
So
love that.
yeah, so these little rituals, having that clear boundary is important. Being multifaceted, so having different interests out with their role, having a phone strategy, thinking about that,
Mm,
and then just that aspect of keeping work in perspective was
nice.
so super important. So these, I think, what makes it so meaningful is that this is real research. This is real leaders who are at the top of their game, who have maybe been through some difficult times and reflected on what works best and have implemented them, and we can learn from these. And as you hear, they're not difficult, they're not crazy, outlandish things to do. It's pretty clear and straightforward.
I love that. And I think that like there's, visualization is so powerful, that we can utilize visualization, to create how our day looks, how we respond to things, our well-being, how our day is going to look like. Um,
Absolutely. I've been maximizing the hell out of that with packing up to move house. I just keep thinking like I'm just like this is going to be an easy process. This is going to flow smoothly. We're going to be in control. It's all going to come together, and that's been the reality. So
yeah.
it's powerful.
Yeah, yeah, I love
Makes
that.
you.
And what's your experience been with burnout and overfunctioning? Has there been a time for you where you've just
Mm.
given, and
Yeah, for sure. For me, it was about 13 years ago, almost to the day, actually. And yeah, it was a really stressful time. There was a lot of personal challenges going on in our immediate family and extended family. And I was working a very demanding full-time job, had a young daughter as well. And it was like that feeling of never getting on top of it and just feeling completely at the edge. And I thought I was kind of fine. Like I was just feeling like, oh, if I just work a bit harder, if I just get to the end of the year, like it will be okay. And it actually took my manager at the time, and he called me one day and he said, I don't think you're coping. And it was very confronting to hear because I thought I had kept the facade and I was keeping it all hidden. But he was like, I don't think you're coping, and I think you might need some help. I think you might need some counselling, which was kind of hard to hear. And also at the same time, there was a recognition that what he was saying was true, and that I needed to sort of down tools and take some time. And I resisted it because it was this time of year, we had so much to do before the end of the year, and I wanted to have that sense of tick, 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 achievement. So I could feel that drive that had been sort of probably contributing to the burnout experience. And I don't think back then people used the word burnout quite so much, but it was more of feeling like I was close to maybe like a breakdown, I guess. But that was such a huge gift because that gave me the permission to kind of go, yeah, he's right. Like he was giving me the time to take time off and go away from work, and take care of myself, which I did. And I started to work with a practitioner to kind of get to the core of some of those deeper beliefs that were, really not serving me, which were really linked into that aspect of what you talked about earlier about blaming the world for how we were feeling. Like that was really what was going on for me when I unpacked it. There was a real sense of, oh, poor me, this is all happening to me. So it was that kind of like
Mm,
victim type thinking that we can all fall into at times of feeling a bit sorry for ourselves. But it was really that circuit breaker for me to then go and get some help and start to, um, create some better strategies for myself and realize that I needed to stop blaming the world and actually do some of the inner reflection work.
yeah, what an amazing manager.
He was, yeah, we caught up last week. We're still friends. We caught up last week. We tend to get together 2 or 3 times a year, and yeah, he was an angel for me. And it wasn't until quite a while later that I found out, like, he was a young manager. He was younger than me. He was pretty new in leadership, and he went and got some coaching himself from his manager about how to have the conversation with me because he
Oh,
was nervous about how to do it. And I think I was, I don't think I was a lot more reactive back then, the cliched fiery redhead. So I think he was like, I don't know how she'll take this. Like, so I really respect his courage to
yeah.
to really have that difficult conversation. And I think it was a real moment in time which transformed my life. And when I do workshops or talks around Are You Okay Day, I really reference that because it often takes someone else to see the signs that maybe we're not coping. We can't always see it ourselves.
Definitely. And I think that's a good representation too of just humans taking care of humans. Like at the end of the day, we're not showing up to work as this, complete unit all the time. Like, there's always something new to learn. We've all got our challenges. There's so many aspects, as you said, to wellness that
Mm.
contribute to, what we bring into the workplace or what we take home. And, to have leaders who really respect and honor the fact that this is a human being and treat them with, the most respect and care, I think is something that all leaders should should work on,
Yeah,
because we're
I
not
do.
robots. And
No, no,
yeah,
we're messy. It's pretty messy being human, and it's only getting increasingly difficult, I think, when you look at the current world that we're living in, and the global chaos. Like, there is just this feeling of the world speeding up. It's getting more volatile. It's getting more incomprehensible. It is fueling more anxiety, and overwhelm for people. And that's
mm,
what we're all living in and picking up on. And then there's the individual challenges and hardships that each of us are then going through, both at work and at home. So it is a lot, and I think it really speaks to this point that we all need help. Like, we all need support. None of us can do, we're pack animals as human. Like, we need each other. And I
mm,
have a team of people. I've been doing this work for 13 years, and I have a team of people that I connect and work with and use, to support my health and growth and well-being. So there's no shame in reaching out to have that support,
definitely.
or to be role modeling it if you're a leader in the workplace as well.
Yeah, definitely. And like when you look at sort of well-being in the workplace, what's what does it look like when, well-being, a sense of well-being isn't embedded in the culture?
It is embedded or isn't embedded?
It isn't embedded.
Isn't embedded.
Yeah,
Well,
let's.
there tends to be um, more fear in the organization. So there'll be more of that masking kind of behavior where people don't feel safe to maybe say that they are struggling or that they need some support. There'll be a sort of like business as usual, stuff it down, just get on with the job, show up and then leave. So there won't be the same level, I guess, of honesty or authenticity, in the workplace. There
Mm,
needs to be an element of vulnerability to do that, which is not always easy. But it tends to be an environment where people just are feeling that they can't necessarily be themselves, or that the environment is not encouraging them to be their best self either.
mm. And what can individuals do, whether they are a leader or an employee, in those situations? Is it, best to leave, or is there something that they can do on an individual level, um, to make
Yeah,
them feel safer and,
yeah,
more vulnerable? Or
for
is it
sure.
really that top down?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we look at what the different influences are on our well-being, there's multiple different factors. So the team that you're part of can enhance your well-being or detract from it. The organization as a whole can support you or not. There's the individual, what you bring to it. There's the leader that you report to. And then there's the whole systems within the company. So there's so much of that as an employee that is out with your control. The policies of the company, the decisions of the leadership team, the whole culture of the company is beyond your control. So I really always speak to people about control the controllables. What can you control? And ultimately, you can control yourself, and what you do and how you show up. And for some people, that may be a case of them taking care of their own well-being, starting to look at domains, starting to create some good habits and behaviors and practices that support them. And that may be enough for them to work in the environment that they're in. Or it may be that point where they realize, actually, this is not a good place for me, and I'm going to actually, you know, own my own experience, and I'm going to step away from an environment that's not healthy for me. But there can be changes that happen that don't necessarily happen from the top as well. I mean, a group that I worked with last week was one of their offsites, and that was, one department within a company who were having an offsite, and they really wanted to make sure, one of the team members really wanted there to be a well-being component, recognizing how people were feeling, and pitched it to the leader, who said yes, and they allocated 3 hours out of their agenda for a well-being session. So change can happen from within organizations and within teams. It does sometimes take that level of courage, or for speaking out, or for, as I did with my last company, for just having an idea and proposing it and they say yes. So there can sometimes be an element of an employee just waiting for a leadership team to get everything sorted, and then for it to fall from the top. And, if it goes back into that mentality of they've got to fix me, or if the environment was just right, I would be okay. And we want to remember it's both, and it's the organization has a responsibility to the employees, and the employee has their own responsibility for their well-being as well. So that will be different for every individual and every person, but certainly change can happen from within. And I think that's what's happening more and more, right? Especially over the last 5 years since COVID, people are like, this is not supporting me. And they're walking, they're leaving. There's the whole quiet quitting movement. There's people actually realizing, what do I want from my life, and how do I make that happen?
Yeah.
So
I love the idea of, be that change maker, do what you can in your control, whether it's, suggesting a wellbeing session with an expert like yourself, or whatever that is, and doing what you can first, to see if you can make, or at least influence some change. But, seeing yourself as opposed to a victim, as I've got the power to change. And if it doesn't, then I can walk away because I've tried to.
That's right. It's like the sense of agency, having agency over your own life. And when I look back at my last employed role, I was a sales rep who ended up kind of being an unofficial well-being person and running these sessions and interviewing the leadership team about their well-being in front of the whole company, just because I was curious. I just had an idea, like, how did the leadership team cope with the pandemic? And I fired off an email, and the CEO said, yep, and agreed to be interviewed in front of the whole company.
That's amazing.
So the role modeling started to happen, which is a result of leaders being honest about their own well-being challenges. It created more transparency, authenticity, and connection within the whole company. So it had a ripple effect where employees started to feel like, I'm not alone. The finance director's dealing with this, or the medical director's having that issue. And it just humanized the whole environment. Whether that continued or carried on after I left, I can't say. But it was a pretty powerful moment in time, and just showed that having an idea and pitching it can work.
Yeah. And I think too, like, as you said, that vulnerability that the CEO showed to share, open the doorway for other people to share their experience. And like, even with the journaling as well, like, it all sort of connects. Once you outflow, you're sort of healing that at the same time. And we're most often we're all going through the same thing, just no one wants to say it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that stress of kind of like trying to hold it all together and pretend that we've got it sorted is exhausting. It doesn't mean we need to necessarily bring all our pain and trauma to the workplace. It's not that, but it's also the sense of normalizing how difficult it can just be to be a human.
Yeah.
It's not easy being human, and so I'm a big fan of just normalizing, speaking, telling the truth, because we tend to pick up on these things anyway, energetically. Like, we can sort of feel if someone's not in integrity with what's really going on for them, and they're trying to just pretend and brush aside. You can feel it.
definitely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And so conversely, like, you've given some examples on what a healthy workplace looks like. What does that look like as a whole? Like have you worked with any clients where you've walked in and gone, well, this is going to be a challenge for me because they seem pretty good.
And no, there's always stuff to learn. There's always stuff to grow. I don't think there's any workplace out there that's got
Yeah.
it completely sorted. So whether it's working with the leadership team or working with employees from a coaching perspective, or whether it's workplace well-being facilitation to try and bring some of this information to people, because once people understand a lot of these, what we've been discussing today, it's like, oh wow, there is things that we can do. So then that starts to create more of a common language within the organization as well, where people are talking about these things and they might be referencing, oh, which of those behaviors of thrivers are you experimenting with just now? Or they can start to have challenges where they're holding each other accountable, and different things like that. So no, there's definitely, in my 4 years of been doing this, I've not walked into a workplace that's absolutely thriving, and doing great, and doesn't need any additional support or help.
Yeah. And so how can leaders or organizations, genuinely support well-being? Like instead of it just being a tick box, because I know a lot of companies are just like, oh, we've got to do the thing. And it's like, tick, we've done the thing. Like,
Mm.
how can they really, you know, support well-being, embed it, and, let it be a part of their culture, not just something that they, oh, we've done the well-being thing.
Yeah, yeah, it really, it needs to be integrated, as you say, into the whole fabric of the company. I think the challenge in the past has been who owns well-being within the company, and it's maybe sat with the HR facility or function, or people in culture, or it's maybe sat with the OH&S risk management team, and so it has kind of felt like it's this piece that sits over there, and maybe we run the yoga classes, or we do our OK day, or we do a couple of lunch and learns a year, and that's it. But it needs to come into the strategy of the leadership team. It needs to be something that's a KPI, that's one of their measurables throughout the year. So it needs to be something that's thought about at a leadership team level, where they're owning it together, and it's not just this adjunct tick box, as you say, that it's actually really meaningful and then is lived and breathed. So there's no use in, it's great to have education, it's great to have resources, it's great to have some shared language, but unless employees see the leaders role modeling this and saying, okay, I'm leaving at 5 o'clock because that's what I need to do, they're, not sending emails at 10 o'clock at night or on the weekends, it will be meaningless. So there needs to be the role modeling of that as well, and a sort of an understanding of how important that is. So it is multi-pronged, it's the education, it's the shared language, it's the role modeling, it's putting resources behind it. Because what I've noticed over the last year or two of running my business is companies saying that they don't have much of a well-being budget.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because we had this spike in 2020 to 22 or so, maybe into 2023, where there was
Yeah.
lots of talk, and it was like it's like companies were really proud to display what they were doing to support employee well-being. But then
Yeah.
the pendulum swung back, and
Yeah.
it's been diminished, which is really disappointing. So there's many companies who are really doing very minimal in the field of well-being. And the
Mm.
fact that we're now seeing statistics in the line of 70 to 80% of Australians are reporting burnout or high levels of stress is speaking to this being a problem that can't be ignored any longer, because the
Yeah.
levels of stress and burnout then impact engagement levels, and then that's got huge impact on revenue, and the economy as well. People are not engaged in their roles, so there's real economic
Mm.
implications for a company avoiding putting
Yeah.
resources, time, energy, strategy
Yeah.
behind well-being.
Yeah. Well, I guess a lot of people have just taken their personal power back, haven't they? And gone, well, actually, if that doesn't serve me and I'm burning out, then I'm not going to be a part of this. I'm not supported. But I think there's also, as you mentioned, if they're not investing in it, there's a bit of a sense of like that's your responsibility. Like
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's both parties' responsibility. Um, and we are, we have free will. It's,
Yeah.
up to us how we operate our life. But yeah, as you said, like the pressure that we have inside a workplace
Mm.
can really diminish our personal well-being.
That's right. And so you nailed it, that there can be the temptation for the company to put all the onus onto the individual and to ignore that there might be any systemic organizational factors at play that are damaging employee well-being, whether that's lack of resources, needing to do more with less, whatever that may be. And it is both and. It needs to be the organization and it needs to be the individual. And it's great if the individuals are taking their power back and choosing. And maybe what that means is that some organizations will start to become not very attractive employees of choice if they don't have those practices in place. So there's definitely warning bells that are ringing. And it's great to be involved with the companies that are saying, yes, we want to support employee well-being, and we're really willing to do that by having these discussions, by having sessions, by investing in leadership coaching for our senior leaders so that they can start to maybe cultivate more self-awareness and, engage in behaviours and practices which support their well-being, but also their ability to lead effectively as well. It's really important. So yeah, good to see the dollars going to that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just reflecting on sort of my career and, 20 odd years ago when I first got my full-time job, like, leadership coaching and all of this sort of like, it just was not a thing, and life back then was so different. So I'm so grateful for, the work that you do and the people that are actually investing in themselves, because it just creates such a nicer ecosystem, not only in the workplace, but because I don't have a job anymore. Well, I do, I work for myself. When I do work with, different clients that have that awareness, it's such a better relationship as well from a, supplier perspective, in working with people that have that awareness, because it's just you feel like you're being treated as a human, not just as, somebody that comes and provides X service.
That's right. That's right. And I love that you use the word ecosystem, because that's exactly what it is. And, with an ecosystem is made up of so many different species and varieties and components, and the overall health of the ecosystem is determined by the health of each of those individual components.
Yeah.
So what do we need to do to support the health of each of those, to ensure that the environment and the organization is thriving?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, one sort of bad egg, or not that anyone is, bad, but one sort of bad energy in a company or in that ecosystem can just tear the whole ecosystem apart. I had a conversation with somebody who said that, I can't remember who, but the whole business closed down because of one person.
Wow.
That's how much they affected, the performance of that business.
So if one person can affect the system in a detrimental way, one person can impact it in a very positive way as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I just want to finish on a couple of, I could talk to you all day, but I just want to finish on a couple of questions. Now, we're bombarded with like well-being hacks, like, meditation apps or cold plunging and, all these things. Like, do you think this culture of hacks actually adds pressure? Like it's just like another thing to do on the to-do list that adds to that sort of pressure, like I've got to do this to feel this way.
Yeah, for sure it can do, especially with the trends. That can definitely make us feel like, oh, I'm not doing this and I should do that. For me personally, the ice bath thing, I know it doesn't work for me. Like it just doesn't work. It's too harsh on my nervous system, so I avoid that. What I speak to more than just like the sort of hack idea, it is just embed some good practices to begin the day and to end the day. And they don't have to be huge. We don't want to make things really difficult. We want to make it something that's really simple, that makes you feel good. And it would be things like not turning your phone on for the first hour and having maybe your cup of tea in the sunlight in the morning, and having some gentle movement and a healthy breakfast, and then begin the day. And then at the end of the day, it can be just allow yourself to wind down, the same as we do with babies and children. Like, we need that wind down time, so disconnect from technology. You know, have some gentle movement, do some journaling or a gratitude practice, and just a couple of things that just become kind of your non-negotiable routines. Whether it's just, you know, as soon as you get up in the morning, you go for a walk around the block, that just becomes your thing, and that's your, or you get up half an hour before the rest of the family does, so you get your quiet, peaceful time before the chaos of the day begins. But whatever it is for you that lights you up and makes you feel good, and then just becomes a non-negotiable. And it's a little practice which over time accumulates. So, you know, these things are not magic bullets. It's not like you do 1 or 2 days of meditation and then all your problems are solved. You know, we want to make it like a cumulative and sustainable habit. So I encourage people to think about the first hour of the day and the last hour of the day, how they're setting themselves up either for success or running ragged. And what feels good for you to adopt. And it may be a nice bath, or it may be breath work, or it may be going for a jog, or it may be yoga, but what is it for you that feels good? And just let that become your non-negotiable. And it's like an anchor. You know, the metaphor I often use for people is we want to be like that big oak tree that's in the forest, and it doesn't matter if it's a 200 km wind, it's not going anywhere. And it's not going anywhere because its roots are really deep and nourished and sustainable. So we got to put the work into making sure the roots are strong. Back to that aspect of well-being being the assets and the challenges. What do we need to do to cultivate more assets and resources? And so for an individual, it could potentially be, okay, I'm not very good at thinking about what's positive. I dwell on what's negative. So a foundational practice for me might be a gratitude practice every day, to kind of even out the negativity bias in the brain. That was my one. That was my first go-to practice, because I don't know, I sort of got forced into it, I guess. but it was transformative for me, and I think it was because I was so stuck in a mindset of dwelling on what was wrong. So look at those domains, see which one is maybe depleted for you. Where do you need to give yourself a bit more love and care and attention, and treat yourself with kindness. Like these should not be punishment hacks. You know, we don't want to be like engaging with things, oh, because I have to, or because everyone else is doing
meditate.
Yeah, no, screw that. Like it's treating ourselves with love and kindness, and what is the most loving way to care for this body, this mind, this spirit, this being. How can I do that? And then just start.
Yeah, beautiful. And my final question for you is, what does being human mean to you?
Oh, you give me something to think about with that one when you sent that through. And I think it is a big part of it is embracing that wholeness of who we are, like with all the complexity, you know, the messiness, and embracing that wholeness with some kindness and some compassion. And learning, I think, more to embody love and presence in our life, so that we're coming from a place that's guided by love and not fear, you know, in our lives. So that would be my summary, I guess, of reflecting on what I think it means to be human, is just really embracing that complexity with love and compassion and kindness.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and for your energy and your wisdom and everything you shared. And yeah.
Thanks, Alicia. It's a lovely conversation. Nice to get a chance to talk about these things.